Hello, I'm Jim Tolles. I'm a spiritual teacher. I blog regularly at spiritualawakeningprocess.com. And today I want to offer some thoughts on awakening your energy. This seems to have been something that's gotten very popular, at least the idea of it, in a lot of spiritual circles. And I thought it was important to take a few moments to talk about what that means, how we really prepare for that, and some possible techniques that you can use to help awaken your energy. Firstly, let's start with what does this mean? Because I think a lot of people have many naive ideas about this whole process of awakening. And when I say process, there's the awakened space that's always within. And we can touch this at any time. We just go into that space of the observer. And the process of sloughing away our attachments to who we think we are. We're sloughing away and letting go of our attachments to our ego identity. So when people come to this idea of awakening their energy, they're often bringing a lot of other ideas along that this will somehow make them feel good all the time. It'll always be blissful. It'll get people to like them. It'll make them feel safe. All their problems will go away. So in this, you see a lot of this hope for a better life, hope for a simpler, easier life. And that's simply not what the awakened space offers. The awakened space offers the embrace of all of life as it is. And that's very rarely what anybody wants. So these motives are really, really important to understand in oneself, because to truly want freedom is a very different thing than to just want to feel good or feel more comfortable. If you want to feel good or more comfortable, go to a massage therapist on a regular basis. It'll be great. You know, your body will feel good and warm and loved and touched and all those types of things. Don't worry about awakening your energy if that's what you really want. And this sort of understanding, this sort of inquiry is really important first step before doing anything else around awakening your energy. Because if you do succeed in hitting that switch, your old life is over. Something else is now growing in the same way that when a seed sprouts, it's done with the shell. So part of preparation is this inquiry, but it also leads towards doing other work you already know you need to do. If you already know that you had trauma growing up and you have not dealt with it, deal with that first. Don't go try on awakening your energy. Ignore that part. Because awakened energy brings up all of these things. And it tends to bring up everything all at once. That's not exactly true, but that's how it will feel at the time, that there's so much erupting inside of you that you don't know how to handle it all. And it can feel very overwhelming. And since a lot of people that are kind of stumbling onto this amazing opening haven't been prepared, they don't know how to handle it, they don't know how to practice with it, to surrender to it, they don't know how to build space in their life, they tend to underestimate how much time they need for these types of transitions, which really tend to go on for years. So any outstanding issues you know of, go look for them. Build a spiritual practice as well. And this does not include some of the more intense techniques to move energy. This is things like meditation or journaling or yoga or some other things that help you to know yourself. And that's the key part of this type of spiritual practice. This is not about believing new things. If you're here trying to believe new ideas to keep you safe, because that's what a lot of people do, that's what a lot of people think spirituality and religion are, you just accept all these beliefs and then you're okay, you're safe, you're saved even, right? So these types of ideas are running around in people's ideas. That's not useful spiritual practice. Useful spiritual practices help you to understand yourself more, help you to look at your ego self, your beliefs, your responses to life, and start to question them, start to work into them, start to breathe into them and all the tensions they bring to resolve them. So starting with that inquiry, why you want to awaken your energy, moving towards more of these preparation, it's definitely ideal if you can find a spiritual teacher who understands awakening and the types of things you need to prepare and do before you even start to work with these other techniques. Then some of the other techniques, maybe you've already heard of, those are things like Kundalini Yoga. There's some very powerful breathwork practices that help move a lot of energy in people. There's some very powerful sexual practices that move that creative energy and get that into flow. And those are predominantly the main ways that I've heard of to awaken energy. I'm sure there's others, and you may find them as you go. But they tend to be very intense. And that sort of intensity is actually a kind of preparation itself. It's preparing you to understand how intense awakening could be for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will. Everybody is going to have different kinds of growth patterns. So I use plants as metaphors. So a grass blade will grow to a certain height, right? And it grows very quickly. A redwood tree will grow much longer, much bigger, requires more resources, much more time. So in this way, somebody could have an awakening process of only a couple of years. Somebody else has several years, maybe a decade, that things just keep breaking down in a lot of intense ways. So that intensity of those practices, that's just like foreshadowing. So it's not like, hey, I'm going to go through this intensity and then it gets better. No, it tends to all get worse for a while because of all the pain we're holding on to. Clearly, some people could have not as much pain and just fully release the ego and be in the space of total release, total enlightenment. But that hasn't been my experience with most people. It's certainly not my own experience. The tendency is that we kind of go a little way and then we contract. And then we go a little way and we contract. So expansion, contraction. And I talk about this a lot on my blog, spiritualawakeningprocess.com. So the whole intensities that you may be doing and feeling, as I said, that's just foreshadowing. That's a slight warning to you, say like, hey, if you keep going down this path, you're going to get more. And there's no guarantee that these techniques will do that. So another thing I like to add is kind of my last thought around awakening energy. It's what tends to be even more important for people. It's not specific techniques that have already been made, but learning to listen to your intuition and what you need. Because that seems to be the thing that is most intelligent, and that's the best thing to decide whether you should have some sort of spiritual awakening. Now, this is a quick little aside. I make a distinction between awakening and becoming more conscious, and a lot of people don't, and this is why I do it. Think of consciousness as like a scale from like 1 to 10, where like 1 is completely unconscious and 10 is completely conscious. And everybody's on a different part. So you can be a mass murderer who has an awakening in jail. And so you're basically at the 1 point. Or you can be somebody who's been serving her community for years and years and has already done a lot of inner work, didn't have a lot of upset trauma. So very clear that helping people is good and those types of things. And so this is like an 8, right, on the other side of the scale here. And those are different points to awaken to, and what those two people are going to have to deal with is fundamentally different. But you don't actually have to have an awakening to start working through things, to become more conscious. And that's why I say most people are on the conscious path, and the awakening just drives you towards the conscious path in that sort of innate, very intelligent way. So you can move into greater levels of consciousness. You don't need an awakening for that, but listening to your intuition will be the best guide in how that you develop consciously and whether your energy even wants to awaken. So your intuition may take you towards things that don't even seem spiritual. It may take you towards following your heart into music. It may take you towards leaving a romantic relationship. It may take you towards starting an amazing new business. So it kind of knows how you need to evolve. And if awakening is part of that, then things will kind of build upon themselves, and that will bring its own intensity, and it's an intensity that I encourage you to trust. Because as things start to break open, they start to get more vulnerable and stickier and messier, and that's where a lot of people will pull back. That's where people will move away from actually opening to awakening, or in general, just becoming more conscious. So whenever those sticky points come, I encourage you to lean into them. Let yourself be in the discomfort, and breathe into it. And by discomfort, it's generally just emotional, psychological, and that can cause physical discomfort as well. So it's not about pounding the body into awakening, right? There's nothing that we necessarily need to do physically, although a lot of actions are physical by nature because we're living in a physical world. But this is just some other thoughts here about the intensities that I'm really talking about. It's these emotional, psychological intensities we have to learn to let go of and just allow and allow and allow. And surrender is ultimately one of the most important tools, just surrendering to what is within ourselves. Just allow it without trying to fix it or change it. And some of these really intense spiritual tools will really push you towards a deeper level of surrender of your own experience to let things unfold and to begin to understand this innate intelligence that's within us all. So these are some thoughts about awakening your energy. And I just want to emphasize one last time, really look at why you want to do this. Because, as I said, once you break out of that shell and you start growing, you're sprouting, it's a whole new world and you really don't go back. So I hope this was helpful. Once again, my name is Jim Tolles. You can find me at spiritualawakeningprocess.com. I also do live streams regularly here on YouTube right now. And I hope you're having a beautiful day.